If you ever wonder why some people thrive in silence while others light up a room, then this episode is for you. Don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Psychology for weekly deep dives into the human mind. Ladies and gentlemen, today we step into year 1921, a time when the world was still recovering from war, when machines were starting to hum with industrial dreams, and when one man, sitting in the quiet of his study, was daring to ask, why do people behave so differently from one another? That man was Carl Gustav Jung, a brilliant Swiss psychiatrist. Jung didn't just observe people, he studied their essence. And in doing so, he introduced two terms that would become timeless in psychology, introvert and extrovert. But what did Jung really mean by these words? They weren't just surface-level labels. He wasn't talking about the loud one in the room or the shy one at the back. He was talking about something much deeper, the direction of your psychological energy. For Jung, an introvert is someone whose energy naturally flows inward. These are the thinkers, the quiet creators, the ones who find meaning not in crowds, but in concepts, in silence, reflection, and depth. They don't avoid people because they're scared. They simply don't need constant stimulation to feel alive. In fact, solitude often restores them. They may be lost in thought during conversations, but it's not because they're disconnected. It's because their minds are searching for deeper patterns, quiet truths. Now, on the other side of this beautiful spectrum, Jung introduced the extrovert, a person whose energy flows outward, toward people, activity, and interaction. These are the ones who process the world by engaging with it. They talk to discover what they think. They feel most themselves when surrounded by motion, emotion, and expression. It's not about being loud. It's about being drawn to the external world as a source of fuel. For Jung, these terms weren't judgments. They were mirrors, helping us see ourselves and each other with more compassion and clarity. Think about it. How often do we misunderstand someone just because their energy doesn't match ours? An introvert may be called aloof. An extrovert may be seen as overwhelming. But through Jung's lens, we see neither is wrong. They're simply wired differently. And here lies the genius of Carl Jung in 1921. In 2 words, he didn't just categorize human behavior. He gave people permission to be who they are, without apology, without shame, and with a deeper understanding of self. When Carl Jung introduced the ideas of introversion and extraversion in 1921, he wasn't just giving us personality traits. He was explaining how our minds move, and more specifically, where our psychological energy flows. This idea became the foundation for what we now call personality psychology. Jung believed that every individual has a natural direction in which their energy travels. For some, that energy flows inward, toward their own thoughts, feelings, and imagination. These individuals are more internally oriented. For others, that same energy flows outward, toward people, events, and external stimuli. They are more externally oriented. This was the root of the distinction between introverts and extroverts. But what does it really mean for energy to flow inward or outward? Imagine waking up in the morning. For some people, silence, reading, and solitude help them feel grounded. They ease into the day through inner reflection. For others, the day doesn't begin until there's conversation, movement, or connection with the outside world. Their energy builds from interaction. Jung believed this preference wasn't random. It was core to our psychological makeup. Introverts, he said, are not simply quiet. They are energized by being alone. It's not that they dislike people. They simply need time to process experiences internally. In a social setting, they may listen more than they speak. They observe. They reflect. And after a long conversation or a busy event, they often feel emotionally drained. Not because something went wrong, but because their energy has been spent in the outer world, and now they must have turned inward to recharge. On the other hand, extroverts gain energy through social engagement. After a full day of activity, they often feel more alive, not less. Being with people, exchanging ideas, sharing laughter, all of this gives them momentum. Silence for too long can feel heavy, even uncomfortable. Where the introvert dives into their inner world for clarity, the extrovert turns outward to the environment for stimulation and connection. It's also important to note that Jung didn't believe people were only one or the other. He believed that all of us have both introverted and extrovert qualities, but one direction of energy becomes dominant, like a compass pointing north. That dominant attitude shapes how we behave, how we recharge, and even how we make decisions. And here's where the brilliance of Jung's idea really shines. By focusing on energy flow, he moved the conversation away from personality labels and towards self-awareness. He gave people the tools to notice when they're depleted, when they're overstimulated, and when they need to shift environments to return to balance. For example, an introvert might thrive in creative solitude but burn out in constant meetings. An extrovert might feel restless working alone all week but thrive in team projects or collaborative discussions. Knowing this about ourselves and others can improve communication, reduce conflict, and help build environments where everyone functions at their best. Even a century later, Jung's idea remains deeply relevant. His insight into energy flow isn't just about who we are, it's about how we stay well. It's about recognizing that our psychology isn't static. It's something we can observe, understand, and align with. So whether you find peace in quiet corners or come alive in crowded rooms, Jung's work reminds us that both are valid, both are valuable, and both are deeply human. Somewhere deep inside each of us is a quiet need to be understood, not labeled, not judged, but gently seen for who we really are. Carl Jung's theory wasn't meant to divide people into boxes. It was created to help us understand why we feel so different from others, and why, despite all our efforts to connect, sometimes we still feel misunderstood. You see, introverts and extroverts don't just live differently, they experience the world differently. And in this difference comes misunderstanding. The introvert, she sits in the corner at a party, watching, absorbing, feeling everything. Someone might walk past and think, she's shy, she's bored, she doesn't want to be here. But inside her, there's a symphony of thoughts, a world rich with detail. She just doesn't express it out loud. Not because she can't, but because her silence is her expression. She's listening, and that, to her, is connection. Then there's the extrovert. He walks into the same room, full of spark and words and laughter. He talks freely, fills the silence with color. But people might think, he's too much. He wants all the attention. What they miss is, he's just sharing his joy the only way he knows how, by reaching outward to pull people in. To him, silence isn't peace. It's distance. And noise is not distraction. It's a bridge. Jung understood this delicate dance, and he wanted us to look past the surface. He taught that introversion and extraversion are not flaws to fix. They're languages, different ways the heart speaks. And when we learn to listen in each other's language, we stop trying to change people. We begin to hold space for them. So many conflicts, so many friendships lost, so many lovers turned cold, not because they stopped caring, but because they never understood how the other needed to feel loved, seen, or safe. The introvert may crave quiet moments with meaning. The extrovert may need spontaneous bursts of shared life. And both are right. Both are real. This is where Jung's theory becomes emotional, because it's not just academic. It's deeply human. It invites us to stop asking, why can't they be more like me? And start wondering, what does their world feel like inside? When we do that, we soften. We become gentler in our relationships, kinder in our expectations, and most importantly, we become more accepting of ourselves. Maybe you're the introvert who's been told you're too quiet, or the extrovert who's been told you're too loud. Maybe you spent years trying to fit into someone else's rhythm. But the truth is, your rhythm, your way of feeling, living, and loving was never wrong. It was simply different. Beautifully, naturally different. And Carl Jung, he saw that. He gave language to what the soul already knew. So whether you speak through silence or sound, whether you need solitude to breathe or company to rise, you are not broken. You are just wired uniquely, and that is your power. Have you ever wondered, why do some people feel alive in chaos and others fall apart in it? Why does one person light up in a crowd while another fades into the background, quietly counting the seconds to leave? Carl Jung didn't just give us two words, introvert and extrovert. He gave us a way to understand our inner architecture, a way to see how each of us is designed to cope, to survive, and to grow. This wasn't just about personality. It was about balance, about healing, and about becoming more whole. You see, Jung believed we all carry both energies within us, introversion and extraversion. But over time, one becomes dominant. The other falls into shadow. This shadow, the ignored side of ourselves, is not evil or wrong. It's just a part we've left unexplored. The extrovert, always facing outward, may forget how to sit with their own silence. And the introvert, always retreating inward, may forget how to risk connection. But true growth comes from facing the part of ourselves we've ignored. Jung called this process individuation. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. Imagine an introvert who learns, slowly, to speak up in meetings, not to please others, but to honor her own voice. Or an extrovert who learns to sit with his thoughts, not to punish himself with solitude, but to listen to his inner truth. These shifts are small, but inside they feel like revolutions. Because every time we stretch toward our opposite, we grow, we expand, we reclaim the pieces of ourselves we once believed were lost or never ours to begin with. Jung's theory reminds us, psychology isn't about fitting into a category. It's about discovering our full range, not just what we prefer, but what we're capable of. The introvert can learn to connect deeply, not by becoming loud, but by allowing presence to shine. The extrovert can learn to rest deeply, not by withdrawing, but by embracing stillness as strength. And the beauty is, neither has to betray who they are to grow. They only have to include more of who they are. That's the emotional core of Jung's insight. You are not just one thing. You are a spectrum, a moving river of energies, flowing inward and outward, balancing, shifting, learning, in a world that pushes us to choose a side, loud or quiet, fast or slow, social or private. Jung whispers something softer, something wiser. You are both. Let both breathe. So, if you're listening to this, and you felt like you're too much, or not enough, if you've been told to speak more, or to speak less, know this. You're not here to shrink to fit someone's box. You're here to unfold, fully. Carl Jung's theory from 1921 still defines us today, because it doesn't just explain what we are, it gently points us toward who we can become, a little more whole, a little more awake, and a little more in love with the mystery of our minds. So, in the end, whether you call yourself an introvert, an extrovert, or somewhere quietly in between, just remember, you are not a label, you are a living, evolving story. Carl Jung didn't give us types to separate us. He gave us a mirror to understand ourselves and to better love each other. The world may not always speak your language, but that doesn't mean your way is wrong. Your silence has meaning, your words have light, and your balance of inner and outer is something only you can define. True psychology isn't about boxes. It's about becoming more human. And maybe, just maybe, the more we understand each other, the softer this world will become. So take a breath, honor your rhythm, and whisper gently, I am exactly who I'm meant to be.